Welcome to the HR course, International HRM, Elective 2. Before I start by saying what is International HRM, there's a small case study that I want you all to see and then understand why we study this course called IHRM, in other words, International HRM. If you look at this picture, what do you think you can observe? Some of you might think it's a river. Some of you might say it is a habitat where people actually live. Some of you might say it's a starting of civilization. But beyond all this, can you observe something else? We are actually seeing a picture of River Nile. We all know that River Nile is the longest river in this world, and trust me, it almost sorts out the entire Africa's problem with regards to water. Majority of these desert-stricken countries, the only solace for them is River Nile. Now, why am I talking all this in IHRM class? What has River Nile got to do with IHRM? That's the question. River Nile is shared by 11 African countries. 11 countries are sharing River Nile. And this itself shows that River Nile in some or the other is a reason for them to bond or to fight. Now, if you look at this the image right now, that you can see how River Nile flows across the different countries and how each country has a share of River Nile. Till now, it was fine. But as economic development hit the continent, where Africa is developing its economy, developing its people, the problem started arising. What is the problem? Who does River Nile belong to? Does it belong to Sudan, where it was originated? Or does it belong to Egypt, where it finally finishes? This is $1 million question and nobody has an answer for this. And countries continue to argue. Egypt says, Sudan, that you cannot build a dam because River Nile belongs to us. Sudan says, why can't we build a dam? Because River Nile originates in our country. Who solves these problems? And this is just one such example. There are millions of issues, and for that, we need to know International HRM. International HRM is basically how people of different nations come together and work as a team. This case study that you just saw, or the pictures that you just saw, is a depiction of one such incident. Now, if the same thing happens to our organizations on a day-to-day basis, how are we going to handle it? So the reason I told all this to you is to show why IHRM is important in a macro level. However, in this course, we'll be dealing how IHRM affects the micro as well as the macro level, but mostly micro level. Before I start with what is IHRM, it's very important we should know what is international business. If you look at this screen here, you can see 3 different brands that we all are actually using, in other words, wearing these brands. An Armani suit, I'm sure all of us, all the guys would like to wear an Armani suit. Tommy Hilfiger, Tag Heuer watch, who wouldn't like such brands? And I'm sure we all use them regularly. But do we realize from where are these brands originating? That is IB. If you actually observe, you can see a brand like Armani. How often do we realize that the brand from Armani is an Italian brand? We might know it, but does it come to our mind? Similarly, Tommy Hilfiger is a US brand. But do we often keep realizing that Tommy Hilfiger is a US brand? Lastly, Tag Heuer is a Swiss brand. The point I'm trying to make is, we might know these brands belong to different countries, but are we actually aware of it? Does it keep coming into our minds? No. That is international business. The boundaries between these countries have blurred drastically, in other words, dramatically. Today, sitting in Bangalore, I can know what is happening in New York, wear a New York brand. A person sitting in Beijing is going to know what is happening in Islamabad and can possibly wear an Pakistani brand. You have varieties, and these varieties are possible only because of international business. Last part before I actually get into IHRM, two big brands, Coca-Cola and Dairy Milk. Who does not like these brands? I'm sure all of us as kids must have consumed these brands a lot. But as kids, did we realize that Coke was a US brand and Dairy Milk or Cadbury's was a UK brand? Even till date, a lot of us think, at least with Dairy Milk, that it's an Indian brand. That is the impact these top business houses have made on us. Now, since we've understood international business, we need to understand four very, very important companies, four types of companies. Mainly, you have the global company, the transnational company, the international company, and the multinational company. Let us understand this with the help of a grid. The grid that you can see on the screen shows two main factors, global efficiency and local responsiveness. When a company has high global efficiency as well as high local responsiveness, it is called a transnational company. When a company has both low global efficiency and low local responsiveness, it is called an international company. But if a company has high global efficiency and low local responsiveness, it's called a global company. And if it has high local responsiveness and low global efficiency, then it is called a multinational company. I've just told you these terms. Let us simplify them and understand them one by one. Okay? We'll understand them with the help of examples. Now, if we start from a global company, what is a global company? A global company is when the entire world is seen as one market. An example of that would be Harley Davidson. They do not tweak their products or brands to suit the different countries' needs. So that is a global company. If you come to a transnational company where you are actually having global efficiency, at the same time you're also tweaking to suit the local country's needs. An example of that would be Coca-Cola. Why Coca-Cola? Let's take an example of Coke from three different countries. Okay, let's have one from India, one from Australia, and one from the United States. Now, if you compare Coke, the same brand, looks the same thing, but the taste of it varies in each of these countries. Let's start with India. The Coke that we drink is highly sweetened. The same Coke, if you try in other parts of the world, it's not as sweet. Why? Because as Indians, we are more comfortable with having our drinks very sweet. So therefore, they've tweaked the taste and made it sweet. Let's take an example of Coke in Australia. Like how in India you can drink, say, half liter, 1 liter at a stretch, it is impossible to drink in Australia because the gas and the composition of the Coke in Australia is very, very different from what it is in India. So there you will have to limit the quantity of Coke you drink. If you move to US, in US you probably drink Coke like water. In most of the parts of US, Coke is actually cheaper than water. So there, again, the way they modify Coke to suit their country's needs, and people actually end up drinking more Coke there. This is an example of a transnational company. Same brand, you're globally efficient, but yet you're tweaking it to the local responsiveness. Then, if you move to an international company where you have low global efficiency and low local responsiveness, we can take an example of Haldiram's. Why Haldiram's? Haldiram's has gone abroad, okay, but they are not modifying their products to suit the foreign markets. Just because you make Haldiram's go to US, instead of making bhel puris, they're not going to make pancakes, or they're not going to make pizzas. At the same time, they cannot manufacture in large scale quantity, so therefore they remain as an international company. Lastly, multinational company. I would say multinational companies where you have low global efficiency and you have high local responsiveness. In each country, you actually end up changing the way the product is tweaked. Now, for example, let's take McDonald's. If you look at McDonald's in India, you have veg burgers, you have aloo tikki burgers. If you look at McDonald's in the US, you have something called as cheeseburgers. We don't get cheeseburgers in India. and you do not have the veg burgers in US. This is how McDonald's has made an impact, and it's called a multinational company. One thing I would like to say, we cannot strictly say any company is global, any company is international. They all are moving from one phase to another phase. What we should remember is where they belong to in a majority phase. Now, for example, both Coke and McDonald's can belong to both transnational and multinational. But because Coke is more on the transnational side and McDonald's is more on the multinational side, we plot them as these examples. So it's a key learning here that you should know that these companies do not exclusively belong to one category, because they're constantly moving around and they can easily come from one place to another. Now that we've understood international business, what is international business, the types of different companies in IB, let us move to the more interesting, or our subject, IHRM, International HRM. It is very important for us to understand how people of different countries, different cultures, different genders work as a team. And if at all you do not have a moderating force, then they will not be able to work as a team. IHRM teaches you how to deal with that change and how that change can be moderated. And if we learn all this, we can be super successful IHRM managers. Now, before I start getting into the details of IHRM, let us understand that there are 4 different trading blocks. Okay, I've only taken a few of them just to show how IHRM is dealt with at a macro level. You have organizations like the WTO, World Trade Organization, you have the SAARC, you have BRICS, you have NAFTA. These are all basically organizations that are helping countries to solve their problems with each other. Okay, the reason I have mentioned this at this stage is because you should know. Like if you talk about issues with different countries, these are the organizations that are going to sort it out for you. Now we've studied IB, we've studied the organizations that are helping IB, we've studied different companies. Let's directly get into what is IHRM. The meaning is displayed there, but instead of reading this, I would want to tell you 3 key words here. Firstly is the HR problems and issues, first keyword. Second keyword is internationalization of business, and third keyword is the strategies and policies in response. Now let's join all these 3 keywords together. The problems and issues arising from internationalization of business and the HR strategies the firms pursue in response to the internationalization process is known as IHR. Looks complicated, you break it down very simple. I'm repeating the 3 keywords. The first keyword is the HR problems and issues. Second keyword, internationalization of business. Third keyword, strategies and policies in response. You join them, you get the meaning of what is IHRM. Now let's come to the process of IHRM. If you come to the process of IHRM, again, I've broken it into 3 keywords. It's procuring, allocating, and utilizing human resources. You first procure them, you get them into the organization, you allocate them on who's going to do what task, and then you utilize them. You have objectives of IHRM, which is about reducing the risk of international human resource to avoid cultural risks, regional disparities, manage diversified human capital. I'm not spending too much time about this because I think we've already dealt these issues in detail. So let's see what else is in store for us. When you talk about IHRM, the most important model is P. Morgan's model of IHRM. You cannot study the subject without understanding this model. Okay? There are 3 keywords I told you. The 3 keywords: procure, allocate, and utilize. They form the topmost region of this model. Apart from that, you have the types of employees and the countries. In the types of employees, you have host country national, parent country national, third country national, and countries you have host, home, and other. Now the question is, what is HCN? what is PCN, what is TCN. To understand this model, let us understand the meaning of these three terms. In other words, these are the golden concepts of IHRM. No matter what you forget, what you remember, you cannot afford to get these concepts. This is what differentiates a person who studied IHRM and a person who has not studied IHRM. Let us start with PCN, Parent Country National. I will start with an example and then link it to the meaning. PCN is a person who belongs to the country where the company was originated. In other words, let's take an example of Infosys. Infosys, as all of us know, the headquarters is in Bangalore. It's an Indian company, right? Now, Infosys, if an Indian is working in the US subsidiary of Infosys, then he is called a PCN. He's an Indian. Infosys is an Indian company. So, obviously, when he goes to US and works, he becomes a PCN, Parent Country National. Now, if an American works in the US division of Infosys, then he is called a host country national. Why? Because Infosys is situated in America. It's not an American company, it's an Indian company. So US is actually hosting Infosys, and US citizen or an American citizen there becomes a host country national. Now, what is a TCN? A third country national. Now, if a Chinese is working in the US division of Infosys, then he becomes a TCN, third country national. Why? Because Infosys has not set up a unit in China. Infosys is set up in US. A Chinese employee is coming and working. He's neither an Indian, he's not in US, so he becomes a third country national. I hope the differences are clear. This is the foundation. This is the basics of IHRM.